And thank you, Minister, for coming into the House this morning. I would have rathered that Minister Harris was here himself. No disrespect to you, I appreciate your time, but I understand he's at Cabinet. The issue that I want to raise really is access to third-level education, and most importantly the affordability of third-level education. And it was a very historic moment back in 1967 when free education was introduced in Ireland. It is one that we as a country experience the benefit of every day, not just socially but economically. And it's something that we are recognised as a nation around the world for having achieved and led on. And today, outside of Leinster House, students will protest about the barriers the financial barriers that are preventing students in Ireland to access third-level education. Education is good not just for the individual, for society, for our economy, but it is an investment in our future, in our collective future. And financial barriers are preventing an increasing number of students from accessing education. And I appreciate, Minister, that the government in place over the last year has recognised those barriers and has taken action to address some of those barriers. And the recent improvements in the SUSI grant in the budget, the increase in the income thresholds and the distance, the qualifying distance, the enhanced funding, the 17 million that Minister Harris secured for the Enhanced Student Assistance Fund, that was really welcome. I've also engaged with the Minister for Housing, and you yourself, Minister Burke, have engaged on this too, in terms of the caps on rents, the caps on the upfront payments for student accommodation, the reduction in the notice period for students to give on accommodation, the direction that you've given to the local authorities not to allow purpose-built student accommodation to be converted to short-term lets. That's all very welcome. I suppose, though, the reality of it is that the research that has been conducted indicates that the cost of a four-year degree is somewhere in the region of €50,000 on average. So it is still too expensive. And we know, and I appreciate that in Housing for All and the €20 billion commitment that has been made to address the housing crisis, that is welcome. But on top of that, I suppose COVID has had an impact. Digs have been reduced. Families are not willing to take additional residents in their homes, quite understandably. And so the pressure is enormous on students. I know that the third-level institutions have been given 170, 180 million in funding to build purpose-built student accommodation, and that the technical universities have been given funding. But Minister, we need an urgency around the provision of affordable student accommodation, because the accommodation element is proving to be a very significant cost. And the Union of Students are basically asking for the government to take action to remove the financial barriers. They specifically call out a request that the 3,000 student accommodation or the student contribution charge be abolished. They also ask that there is further reform of the SUSI grant scheme. But really, I suppose more than anything, they're asking that the government will take urgent action to ensure that student accommodation is affordable to all students. So, Minister, I hope that Minister Harris has sent you here with some good news today, and I look forward to your reply. Gura Mogath.
Thanks. Minister, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and obviously to give Minister Harris's apologies. Unfortunately, he cannot be here. I know he was keen to attend, but unfortunately, with Cabinet, he's unable to attend. The Government has taken action to address affordability in student accommodation. Rent increases in student accommodation is capped under the rent pressure zones, and from this year onwards, students cannot be made pay more than 2 months' rent up front when commencing a tenancy, ending the practice wherein students had to pay several thousand euro upfront to secure accommodation. There are a number of supports available to students facing financial barriers to attending higher education, the principal one being the Student Grant Scheme, which assists more than 70,000 students annually to access third-level education. The Student Grant Scheme includes a non-adjacent rate of grant, which is a higher rate of grant that takes into consideration the additional costs which may be associated with living further away from college, such as accommodation costs. From September 2022, the distance for the non-adjacent rate will be reduced from 45 kilometres to 30 kilometres, meaning that more students will qualify for this higher grant rate. Students experiencing exceptional financial needs can apply for support under the Students' Assistance Fund. This allocation to the Students' Assistance Fund for 2021 academic year is €17.2 million, which includes an additional €8.1 million of the COVID-19 Return to Education funding. However, fundamentally, this challenge is one of supply. As a country, we need to dramatically increase the supply of all types of housing and accommodation, including student accommodation. That is why the Government has launched Housing for All, led by my department, the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. This sets out a series of actions which will be delivered to fix the housing crisis. The plan is backed up by the largest ever housing budget in the history of the state to transform our housing system in excess of €20 billion. The programme for government, Our Shared Future, contains a commitment to work with higher education institutions to ensure that more accommodation is built on and off campus using cost rental and other models. An important element of this is ensuring that the higher education institutions have access to low-cost financing. Since 2017, the Housing Finance Agency has approved a total of €157 million in loans to support the provision of more than 1,400 new student bed spaces across 3 universities. At present, the technical university are unable to borrow to build their own student accommodation. And Housing for All contains a commitment to support our technological universities to develop purpose-built student accommodation through access to appropriate financing such as TUs can borrow from the Housing Finance Agency. Minister Harris and the Department of Higher Education have been engaging with representatives from the higher education sector on this issue to better understand how they can be supported to build more student accommodation. Together with these stakeholders and the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, we are looking to develop a stronger pipeline of affordable student accommodation, which we know is critical. As part of that work, we will look at the potential for the use of funding models such as cost rental in the higher education sector, as well as examining existing barriers to building affordable student accommodation. Thank you, Caroline.
1 minute, Senator.
Yeah, Gurmageth, Minister, and thank you for your reply. And I accept the and absolutely welcome the innovations that the Government has taken in terms of the enabling the technical universities, the consideration of the affordable cost rental model, and the other innovations in terms of the capping of the rents, the limiting of the upfront payments and the reduction of the notice periods. We have to go further though, Minister. We have to absolutely ensure that any of the purpose-built student accommodation that has already been built is hit with a vacant property tax if it's not actually being used. We have to ensure that students who are financially struggling are financially supported through the assistance funds which are in place. And I really do think, Minister, that you and the Government need to look at being ambitious about ensuring that every person, every citizen in our society has access to third-level education. Education makes people smarter and better. It enables people to make better choices for themselves, to live smarter, to live better, to make a greater contribution, not just to their own immediate community and their own immediate family, but to our society at large. We have the proof of the value of investment in education. As we move out of COVID, let's make an investment in our future. Let's make an investment ensuring that every citizen has access to third-level education that is affordable and ideally is free. Gurmageth.
Thanks, Minister. 1 minute.
Thank you, Caroline, and I thank Senator Fitzpatrick for her commencement matter. And I do know there is huge ambition contained in Housing for All, and I think in terms of Minister Harris in his higher education role, what he has done in terms of bringing additional technical universities together, trying to navigate borrowing capacity for low-cost loans, which is going to be so important, but also in bringing a guaranteed 10,000 more apprenticeships into the economy every year. And that's a big statement, because now we have it on the CEO form, where students, prospective students, considering their third-level options, now see, there is more alternatives and more stable careers, which I think is so important. We want to try and get as many people into further education. We want to, eliminate all barriers to access, because, education is the key to unlocking all our potential. We've seen that across the history of this state, how important it is. And I know Minister Harris will be to the forefront of working to ensure that we're building more low-cost, affordable housing in our institutions all across the state, because it's very important, be it a technical university or on-campus accommodation in our university network. It is so important. So we continue in our singular focus to do that.
Thanks, Minister. Very important, Senator. My own son couldn't find a place to live in college this year, so he's commuting from Clare, burning lots of fossil fuels. because the public transport is yet to enable him to travel in public transport. So yes, it's a huge issue, but I think we're all aware of the fact that we need to build more houses, and the empty site thing is massive as well. Gurmaga, thanks Minister.